Christina, so excited to be with you here on Social Impact Power Chat. And as we do, we're going to jump right in if that's okay.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Okay. So question number one, how did you get into social impact? What was your entree into this beautiful world?
I think, like many, I never expected to, I didn't necessarily know about social impact. And so my journey was one where a lot of different pieces just really fell into place. And I was able to find where I feel like I ultimately belong. But I started my career as an elementary school teacher, and previous to that had been really involved in nonprofit. So I always thought I'd kind of lean into like the nonprofit education space. And then after that, decided, I really want to gain additional skill sets. I grew up in the Bay. And so I thought, okay, let's check out tech because I felt like it was just a really great place to kind of understand the landscape, gain some skill sets, grow my career. But I've always kind of had that sense of I want to be in the space where there's just like really mission driven work. And when I got to Box, that's where I started my career in tech, I learned about social impact. And at the time, Brian Breckenridge was our executive director of Box.org. And I really just like sought him out and wanted to understand what is it that you do, and was so drawn to what he was doing. I actually was a recruiter and did a lot of the work with him for more than a year in addition to my full-time job, and just got to learn the ins and outs of anything from volunteering to interacting with nonprofit customers to how do you leverage your product for positive impact. And I was just a sponge. And then when the time came, I was able to move into this space full time and took on a number of the initiatives that Brian had introduced me to. And from there, it's really been exciting to see just how different and diverse this space is. So when I say I'm in social impact, I also love to say like, and here's what I mean by that, because in the 3 different social impact roles I've had, they've all had really different components.
100%. So perfect. Bringing us to present time. Tell us about the role that you sit in now and, a bit about your work and what your team is up to.
So I am currently at Checkr on the Checkr.org team, which is our social impact initiative. And part of the reason, there are actually a couple reasons why I decided to make the move over to Checkr. At my last company, I was leading social impact and sustainability, and I came to learn about this idea of fair chance hiring. And for those who don't know, fair chance hiring is really helping folks with records move into gainful employment. So it's the hiring of individuals with records. And the reason I came and stumbled upon this work is we actually became one ourselves at my last organization and had the opportunity to bring in individuals with records onto our engineering team. And I just saw the power of really unlocking those opportunities, but just the positive benefits that has to the organization, not only, the impacts that it has to the individual, obviously, that is receiving that job. And so Checkr was on my radar because from a social impact perspective, that is their core focus. So we focus specifically on fair chance hiring. And so I came over here because I was really curious about what it would be like to work for an organization who had a very specific social impact focus. Because in my last 2 companies, while we had chosen, specific focus areas, it was much more broad. And so I was curious about what it would be like to actually focus and hone in on one area. So my role here is actually to help customers and companies become fair chance employers. So I train organizations to think about fair chance hiring practices. And then internally, I also have the opportunity I launched our first apprenticeship program specifically for justice impacted talent. And so what that's looked like is across 7 different teams, we have 9 apprentices, all who have records, who are upskilling and reskilling into various career paths here at Checkr. And what's cool about that is the ultimate goal is that while we're training companies to become fair chance employers, we're also upskilling and reskilling talent with records. And then not only is it a talent source for Checkr, which we've seen to be incredibly powerful, more than 4% of our employee base has a record. And so we want to be able to share that with others. And so it actually goes hand in hand that you're creating that demand with employers and then also creating this talent pipeline. So that's what my job looks like. Again, very different than my previous roles, but I get to like really hone in on a specific focus area.
And I love how it marries so much of your background that you shared with us, which is, talent acquisition, social impact. I mean, this is like the Christina job that you made out of clay, as I say. So it's amazing. So,
For
really
sure.
the core of these power chats is trying to get to a gem, a pearl of wisdom that you've learned that somebody who has a social impact role could take and run with. Would love to hear a learning, kind of peel back the onion for us, whether it's something you've done with Checkr or another opportunity of something that you helped lift up and accomplish, whether it was a program or a specific relationship, and how you did it and how people at home could do it too.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I feel like every initiative in social impact feels like it's this like new endeavor, and it's like, oh, we've never done this before. And, you have to kind of figure out all the different pieces that come into play. But what I will say is, I think, as I reflect on all the different initiatives that I've been able to be a part of, whether that's growing a volunteer program or identifying grantees, for a grant round, or repackaging our product so that it really met the needs of nonprofits that we were working to serve. What I've been telling folks recently is I've had conversations for those who are looking to get into social impact. I think the most important piece is really just like having a super strong business acumen and understanding, first and foremost, before creating any initiative, we all want that like really impactful, positive outcome. We want to be able to tell the stories and know that there is, that we're really building out the mission driven work that we have all sought to be a part of. But it really starts with, how do you understand the business and the ecosystem that you're operating within, and what is going to get all the different stakeholders to say yes? And so, for example, my goal with the apprenticeship is that we are creating multiple career pathways for individuals with records, that we're getting them on a pathway for gainful employment. I think that, to me, again, is what I love, that I get to do that. From a business perspective, the way that we got this to actually launch was not only because Checkr wants to have more representation at our organization, but we also want the best talent. We want to make sure that we're super competitive with the market. We want to make sure that, we are bringing in the most loyal and hardworking individuals. And when we look at the population that we are serving through this program, there are so many stats and studies that show that folks with records are, the most loyal, hardest working individuals that you can bring into an organization. And so I really lead with, what are the business benefits and what are you going to get as a company from this? And then on the flip side, right, like I also get to see the outcome that I want to see for the individuals that are coming into the program.
It has to make sense for the business of the business, or else it's not sustainable for the organization. 100%. I love that. It's brilliant. So the last question I have is the crystal ball question, which is, everything that you just shared, I think is totally right on. What are you bringing into 2024 and beyond? And like, how are you future proofing the work and your team?
It actually goes really hand in hand with what I was just sharing with like how we even launch and start an initiative. I think we're all hearing different rumblings of, DEI and social impact, and starting to hear, okay, should we be doing this? Or various aspects of the work that many of us are doing are potentially feeling like they're under attack, or the narrative around some of the work we're doing is seen in a certain lens and not always a positive one, depending on who's, analyzing it. But what I really think is important is that for any program that we're doing, all of us many of us just went through our annual planning, again, rooting it on what are the benefits to the organization? How do we talk about this in a light that like no one is really going to question? And I think what's so cool too is, like, with our program, we know that the justice system, that Black and Brown communities are disproportionately impacted by the justice system. We also know that, when we're doing this work, everyone believes, and we've seen this like bipartisan, that everyone has a right to work.
Yeah.
And so while we're having these conversations, as much as I want to lead with what I know to be true and pushing for like DEI and representation, I also know that when I'm talking about some of these really important initiatives, that it's also important to understand what are the things that unite us. And it really comes back to that, like, how do we provide opportunities? How do we make sure that there is this opportunity to work regardless of our past? And so what I'm finding going into 2024 is, at no point am I going to step away from what I like know to be true or what drives me. but I also am thinking about, like, how do I frame this in the most productive way so that we can continue to move forward on these goals and these initiatives, and again, without ever compromising what I know to be true or what I want to make sure we're pushing for. And it's hard, but I also think it's an interesting challenge, and it's a good one to be navigating, because we become so polarized in so many environments, to figure out, like, how do we continuously find some of that common ground so that we continue to move this work forward.
I would ditto everything that you just said. And as you and I have had in past conversations, that's where data can come in, right? Because if you have
For
metrics
sure.
to support these arguments, and to support that narrative, you really can have a totally different conversation than if it's like, I think this is going to work. Um,
Yeah, for
amazing.
sure. No, and absolutely.
Yeah, amazing to talk to you. I really appreciate you taking the time to power chat. Everything that you're doing with Checkr is exactly what we need more of in the world. And for anyone listening who hasn't heard of Checkr and thinks that this could be a good resource for your company, where can they find more information?
For sure. So I'm actually so excited. This is a little bit of a, to come. We're launching a resource hub and a brand new website in April. So April is actually Fair Chance Month nationally. So it's a focus on, in some areas, called second chance hiring, fair chance hiring. But checkr.org will be relaunched in April. For now, you can go to the site and learn more. It's more of an overview, but I'm super excited to be sharing a lot more come April this year.
Amazing. Well, we will mark our calendars and cannot wait to see you grow this field.
Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you so much for the time.